Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So yeah, Cabin in the Sky, which was your pick from I don't know, probably a year ago. You told me that you wanted to talk about this movie.
Yeah, I have always loved the film, and it's funny because I'll tell other people to watch it, and they're like, "Okay, that was a film, whatever." But what really amazes me is just like the level of performances, because this really was just like a showcase of the top black talent of the day.
Hmm,
From like Lena Horne and Eddie Rochester Anderson, Ethel Waters to you have Duke Ellington and like Louis Armstrong.
yeah.
So I love it for that reason. And there's another film, Stormy Weather, also starring Lena Horne, that I think came out in the same year, 43. um, that film, so that's the one. If you've seen, are you familiar with the Nicholas brothers?
I am not now.
Okay. Well, they were like two, their brothers, famous dancers. And there's an incredible scene of them, and this is in the film Stormy Weather, of them. I can't even describe it honestly, but they're like doing splits over each other while going down the stairs. And it's just, I'll send it to y'all later. But I like that film because it's kind of the same thing, another big studio effort of like black performers. But Stormy Weather is more so like literally just that. There's not a whole lot of plot, whereas Cabin in the Sky at least has a little bit of plot. So yeah, that's the reason I like it. Yeah. What did y'all think?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, fun movie. It definitely, I think, stands out from a lot of other musicals. I mean, primarily just because it has an all black cast, which is unfortunately very unusual for the early 40s. But then yeah, it has it, like, I like I don't know, it's kind of magical realism too. The whole sort of like, not really angel and devil, but like General and Lucifer Jr. um, as like they're just like presence of like trying to kind of subtly influence different things, or also just like them reacting to different stuff is really fun. Um, and then yeah, just like the music and the dancing is incredible.
Yeah, the songs in this movie are great. Definitely like stand out for me. Like I think that a lot of the jokes related to the devil characters are really good. But yeah, the music, like the songs are great, especially I think Ethel Waters. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of her just belting is incredible.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like where to even start with this film. I mean, just because we just talked about like the incredible dancing. I don't know if y'all caught this, but this film is credited for having like the first on-screen moonwalk. It is in the scene where this like it's the tap dancer, in he's like in the kitchen or somewhere in the house,
Mm-hmm.
doing a whole tap dance, and yeah, he does the moonwalk for like 2 seconds. So I don't know if that was like, even significant back then, but in hindsight, people were like, oh, first one. So that was really interesting. But I guess something that fascinates me about this film is, so we have, the angel and devilish characters, and obviously it's wartime, and you have like the good guy being the general. I thought that was
Hmm.
interesting. And this film itself is not super high on like the, military propaganda. Stormy Weather, I would say, is definitely more explicit in that. But I have some notes about this film. So obviously there were not a whole bunch of like all black cast, especially made by major studios. um so just like this kind of timeline I want to lay down is, this is a time where they're really encouraging black people to join the military. So the year before, 1942, there was a booklet called Negroes in the War that was distributed, and it basically just, celebrated various black people in their military accomplishments, and of course tried to get more people to join. And then you have this film, which again, not super strong on the military propaganda, but like it's a little bit there.
Mm.
But then the next year, 1944, you have the documentary, The Negro Soldier, which is like a very direct attempt at trying to get black people to join the military.
Hmm.
So I always find that really interesting. And actually, so the Bureau of Motion Pictures, which was part of the Office of War Information, of course, had a lot of their hands in Hollywood. And I thought it was interesting because I found this quote. It's from the Bureau of Motion Picture Script Review. They called this film, they said it depicts African Americans as, quote, simple, ignorant, superstitious folk incapable of anything but the most menial labor. So I thought that was an interesting take. But on the other hand, you had the NAACP praising the film, saying
Right.
that the treatment of this black fable, which avoided cliche and racial stereotypes, is something to be celebrating. So just some of the reactions to the film were really interesting. And if you're ever, that interested, you can go online. The Margaret Herrick Library, which is, part of the Academy, they have a lot of their digital collections available online. So I actually went and found the actual script notes. And a lot of it is just like, you can't say the word hell here. You can't say the word hell there. You say the word hell twice in this scene, and them freaking out. But there are some interesting notes about just like how it could potentially be received. So.
Goddamn. You're just showing us up by one, watching a movie twice, and two, going to the archives and and looking at script notes. Incredible.
I will say I've literally done a presentation on this film before, like several years ago. So I just pulled up my notes from then. But go ahead, Glenn.
I was thinking if we watched like 1 or 2 movies for every episode, we probably would go that deep on each one. But I think the fact that we watched like 5 to 7 kind of makes
That's
it a little
fair.
bit harder to do. Should we? I mean, we should do a plot synopsis, right?
Oh yeah.
Little Joe tries to be good, but his pious wife, to his pious wife Petunia, but he has a gambling problem. Eventually, he runs afoul of Domino Johnson and is shot while at the club. As he's dying at home, he sees visions of Lucifer Jr. and demons ready to take him to hell. Petunia prays for him, and the strength of her prayer summons the general and his angels. The two parties strike a deal. They'll wipe Joe's memory and give him 6 months to redeem his ways. The devils and angels spend that 6 months trying to influence him toward heaven or hell, and the demons get a big win by sending seductress Georgia Brown and by giving him a winning lottery ticket. He tries to stay on the right path, but a critical moment of misunderstanding between him and Petunia sends him down the wrong one. At the end of his 6 months, Petunia arrives at the nightclub, and after some back and forth and a scuffle, Petunia prays to God to smite the entire sinful place. God sends a tornado, and they're both killed. At the pearly gates, Joe regains his memory and realizes that he messed up his chance. Petunia is about to be sent to heaven, and Lucifer Jr. is about to take him to hell, when at the last minute it's revealed that the tragedy at the nightclub has convinced Georgia Brown to donate all the money little Joe had given her to the church, pushing him right over the edge into heaven eligibility. As they head together into heaven, little Joe wakes up and realizes that this had all been a dream since he was initially shot in the club, and little Joe learns his lesson and becomes a pious good man.
Wow, what a wholesome story.
That is for sure the most concise, best plot synopsis we have done because you wrote it down ahead of time. Like it's usually us being like, "What happened?" So thank you for that.
Yeah, that was great.
We were talking about Looney Tunes earlier with Red Hot Riding Hood, and I feel like this kind of devil and angel on your shoulder stuff is like so baked into me from Looney Tunes specifically.
Mm.
I don't know like where that idea comes from. There probably is like some source or whatever of the idea of a devil and angel working their angles on
Is
you.
it the Bible? I'm not sure.
Could be the Bible.
It's like no,
But
it's Looney Tunes. No, it's vaudeville.
But yeah, no, I thought that was like a really fun element. Ambrielle, you were talking about war also, and like one of the great parts in this movie is when the devils are brainstorming ideas on how to make things difficult for little Joe to be a to go on the right path, and the Lucifer Jr. is rejecting all of these ideas, and you're like, oh, you're all my B idea guys. All the A guys are over there in Europe.
I also wrote that down. I was like, that's a good joke. Very, very topical.
I also love that scene because in that, I think like one of the plots was to, I don't know, give him a bunch of money and watch him self-destruct with all of the new money and new wealth that he has. And I thought that was interesting because like it's this paternalistic idea that like it's better for him to not have money, because if he does have money, then he's just going to go off the wagon and go crazy and, ruin his life.
Hmm.
And I thought about that idea in relation to just like, I mean, obviously this applies to so much of world history. But like the paternalistic ideas of um essentially like oppressors saying, hey, we're actually going to
Mm.
limit your freedom, and it's going to be better for you because if we give you this freedom or if we give you this money, you're going to go crazy and you don't know what's best for you. So I honestly, I don't know if anyone at the time was kind of thinking the same thing, but in my 2025 brain, that was one of the first thoughts I had in that scene.
It feels like it sidesteps it a little bit because of the all black cast.
Hmm.
Because like it is, you know, I think they're the kind of, I don't know, like circa 1860 pro slavery argument that you mention. It would be more obvious if there were kind of white oppressors or white like kind of puppet masters in this
Hmm.
movie. Um, but like it does seem like it is engaging with that idea, maybe without like engaging with the it may be engaging with the idea, but maybe without like some of the more horrific implications of if like they weren't black themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
But regardless, like they were, the demonic characters coming up with those ideas.
Hmm.
So that was interesting.
With like the devil characters do also say like we've gotten so many people with this with like just by giving them money,
Hmm.
which I mean like there is I think like a kernel of truth to that too. Just like I do think wealth can be a corrupting force on people.
Definitely.
Um, it makes me wonder like right what like how that was intended. I don't know. I know this is based on a play. I don't know who wrote the play or if that element plays into it or not.
Do you know, Ambrielle, if it was like black um like talent like working on the original script of the play?
I believe so. I know it played on Broadway. Let me search right now. So yeah, it opened on Broadway in 1940. Yes, there were all black casts. Yeah, so it was actually described as, quote, a parable of Southern Negro life with echoes of Ferenc Molnar's Lilium and Mark Connolly's The Green Pastures. I'm not familiar with Lilium, whatever that is.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it it is interesting just watching it and seeing how this is like probably one of the films that laid the template for what kind of like got Tyler Perry famous, was like these morality plays, where you have like very religious people and it's also encouraging, a specific way of life with through the use of comedy. But I don't know, it just gave like very Tyler Perry, who I could talk about him for hours because I have plenty of things to say about that man. But yeah, I don't know, I was like, wow, this is like, I wonder if this is the blueprint for that.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I and I think maybe Glenn, you too, like grew up pretty non-religiously, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to like think about this like from this sort of like within religious perspective, like how like this movie is about like going to heaven and hell and being like a pious person and someone who loves God and acts in the right way. Um, but it, I guess it doesn't, it's weird. It feels the experience of watching the movie doesn't feel preachy in the kind of off-putting way that I think a
I think
lot of
so too.
religious-y kind of stuff ends up feeling for me at least.
I think it's kind of the fact that this movie is feels more like a fairy tale than a sort of
Yeah.
like morality tale necessarily. Like yeah, there are morals, and it is very much like yes, going to church means you are good, and gambling means you are bad. Like it's very kind of I don't know. Uh, it's sort of simplifying ideas down to fairy tale language, I guess. And I do think that right as a not particularly church going person myself. Um, it didn't feel like it was necessarily right. I wasn't like, oh, here we go, talking about how great going to church is. It's just like, yeah, it makes sense. Like that's yeah. I think within the context of the story, it just feels like a kind of natural progression. And yeah, I think the kind of comedy of it and the Christian iconography that it's using is so just like kind of baked into a lot of American storytelling anyway.
Ambrielle, you were saying that you could talk about Tyler Perry for a long time, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on the, you made that comparison, but like some more detail on your thoughts about that, because I ashamedly have never seen any Tyler Perry movie beyond Gone Girl. So
I don't think you need to be ashamed, first of all. Yeah. Uh, Whenever people ask me how I feel about him, it's very complex. But I guess like he's significant in my life simply because like I did grow up in a very religious household,
hmm,
and he started like as a playwright, and he would film these productions on stage, and then release them on DVD, and that's kind of how I think he got his name more and more out there. And a lot of his earlier stuff was like very religious, very much like this, a lot of comedy, and he's kind of shifted away from that, but there's still a lot of those undertones in his work, which like it definitely appeals to a certain type of audience, and that audience not is definitely not me. I grew out of that a while ago.
hmm,
But it's interesting to see how he's become so successful, like I mean a whole billionaire or whatever, which that's another topic. But how he's become so successful off of this kind of like template of storytelling, because it
hmm.
does appeal very well to um I would say like a lot of older black people who are very religious and grew up with that, like grew up in the church and stuff like that. So
Right. That's so interesting. I had, from the trailers, I had just kind of assumed it was all zany times with Medea, and not, I
mm.
didn't know about the religious angle at all.
Yeah, that is. I mean, yeah, I'd say honestly, I stopped watching his films several years ago. But yeah, early on, very, very all religious, and more recently, the most recent one I've seen probably came out like 4, 5 years ago. Um, yes, there's still like those mentions of and I don't know, maybe it's just something that you can't really escape from when like you grow up, especially in the black church like I did, because
Hmm.
another reason, like when I started this film, and they have the scene of them all singing in the church. I one think it's interesting just because I think that was probably like a necessary thing at the time to portray black people in church. I think it because obviously this film was playing, all over the nation,
Hmm.
except in places where it was banned, like Memphis, I think. Um, but I think having these characters be very pious, one is like true to a lot of like the black experience, especially in the South. But I also think for broader audiences, or for like white audiences, it probably made them more comfortable watching
Hmm.
a film, you know, where maybe they can relate to that, and they can't so much relate to more of the other issues presented in the film. But I think, that makes it very broadly relatable.
Wow. Yeah. That's yeah, that's interesting.
I am curious about like how this movie was released. I couldn't find a lot of information about it, of like whether or not it was only shown in segregated theaters or not, or if it was sort of like marketed to a larger audience. I did read in Wikipedia that like a lot of theaters in the South refused to show it just on account of them there being black actors in it, which is crazy, and that the cop showed up at one of them and like shut the movie down, which is like I tried, I don't know why I'm like surprised by like racism in the South anymore, but even it's just like come on, like what? How are you so threatened by this? Like
I mean, this was, this was the environment that created the civil rights era.
Right. Yeah. And that's like that's nothing compared to a lot of the other awful things that happened in this time period. But like, I'm I don't know, Ambriehl, if you done research into like what the release of it was like, or sort of like how it was distributed or how it was received.
As soon as we heard that you did a whole presentation on this, we're like, what is it? Like, tell us, Ambrielle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't really know much about the actual like distribution. I don't even know. I mean, again, I know it's MGM. It was one of the first all black cast by a major studio. I don't really know how exactly it was marketed or what the responses were beyond some of the ones that I read to y'all earlier. um yeah, like you said, it was controversial just on account of it being black, and you laughed, which I don't know, sometimes I feel like I laugh at the worst moments, but racism is funny sometimes because it's just so absurd and it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make sense. Like, why are you calling the cops to shut down this movie? Like, it's literally a movie of people singing and dancing about God.
I
Yeah.
get the sense like they didn't object to like its subject matter or like what was happening in the film or like anything else about it. Just the fact that it was a film starring black people. They were
Yeah,
just
that's
like,
it.
no, can't have this.
Yeah.
Shut this down. Call the
None of
Well,
cops.
that.
that's isn't that just kind of often the case for like morality boycotts of movies a lot of the
Right.
time.
Yeah. Very
Morality
true.
is usually code. I was uh, listening to this podcast called "If Books Could Kill" with and Michael Hobbs is a gay journalist was
Oh, I
talking
love
about like,
him.
oh yeah, yeah, he's
I
great.
listen to Maintenance Phase sometimes, and I've started listening to him on You're Wrong About.
Oh yeah, if books could kill is really good. I highly recommend that podcast. But he was in a recent episode. He was they were talking about the I don't know the moral majority or something like that from
Mhm.
like the neoconservatives from 20 years ago, and he was saying that like moral just means that you hate gay people and you don't want to say it.
Yeah.
And same kind of deal here, right? Is probably some kind of thin justification or papering over of kind of biased feelings. uh yeah. Ambrielle, what's your history with this movie? I know, like, you're saying you've been a fan of it for a while, right?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember the first time I watched it, but I just know over the years it's kind of stuck with me because I mean I am just a huge like jazz music fan, and I love history and especially Black history, and I love Hollywood history, so this brings them literally all together.
Nice.
So that's why the film has stuck with me. I'm also a huge Lena Horne fan. I
We haven't mentioned
it's
her yet.
Yeah, yeah.
True.
So Lena Horne plays the seductress in this film, and she has a very fascinating career that I won't, tell you all about right now. But she made this film when I think she was like 26. And something that's interesting is the on-screen kind of beef between Ethel Waters and Lena Horne. There was also beef off-screen, and there's actually like this funny story where apparently like Lena Horne was in a dance number or something, but she injured her ankle. And according to sources on set, Ethel Waters said God works in mysterious ways. uh,
Wow.
yeah, so like there was like some
Damn.
true beef there. But I actually found this 1981 interview that she did with Dick Cavett. And of course, this is, 1981, so almost 40 years later. But she talks about her relationship with Ethel Waters, and it's really interesting because she has a very empathetic view of her. She basically says, like, yeah, to Ethel Waters, someone who has been in the game since like the early 1900s, she started on vaudeville, worked her way all the way up. She probably thought I came in and, was just sleeping around, which is not true, but there was kind of that bitterness of like the new girl in town, the young girl in town. Obviously, Lena is lighter skinned, she's thin. Ethel Waters was not. So, like, there was just that kind of
Hmm.
baked in tension
Mm.
between them. And it also you can see it in the film, which, it kind of plays into a bunch of different like stereotypical or archetypical, whatever the word is, characters. But some people say that Ethel Waters' character Petunia in this film is kind of like the mammy. I don't know if I fully agree with that, or at least it's not the best representation of what I view as a mammy. But it is interesting how Lena Horne kind of fits into like the tragic mulatto character, the seductress who, like, Lena Horne's character is very sexual in the film, whereas
Mhm.
Petunia is all about God and all about doing what's right and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And actually, so Ethel Waters, she was one of the first people to sing the song "Stormy Weather," which is again that musical that came out the same year as this, starring Lena Horne. It was called Stormy Weather. But she's the one who kind of like popularized the song. And then Lena Horne kind of took it and made it her own,
Mm.
stars in a film called Stormy Weather singing this song. And in the like early 2000s, I want to say at some point, her version of the song was actually like inducted into the like Grammy Hall of Fame or whatever. So it is just, I don't know, watching that Dick Cavett interview with her really made me think just about like the dynamic at that time and what it felt like to be Ethel Waters, an older Black woman who's been working for like 30 plus years at this point and is kind of
Mm.
just now being like getting this true moment, versus Lena Horne, who's the new girl in town who's singing my songs.
Yeah, wow.
I just think
Right.
that's like an interesting dynamic.
It is like, I thought maybe it's kind of a weakness of this movie, the simplicity that it paints
Hmm.
Lena Horne's character with. Like, the movie is dealing in these kind of like iconic, you know, archetypes. It's like
Yeah.
people are acting out archetypes, but it does feel, reductive and misogynistic to have one of them just be like the sexy lady who ruins the time of everyone else.
She's kind of a femme fatale. That's how I looked at it anyway. Um, I do think this movie I think it's going for archetypes and does probably fall into stereotype also, but certainly, I mean, for like this, I always kind of probably like for the time, but like comparing this movie to like Gone with the Wind is
Oh
like
yeah.
such a huge difference. It's like completely. I feel like Gone with the Wind has almost just like it feels very much like it's like looking down on the black characters almost, even though it's like kind of in the context of the story is trying to be like, oh no, like they're people, and it's like, no, movie, I can see like you're showing your hand a little too much here.
Hmm.
Whereas this movie feels like it's just a movie about people that is in this kind of fairy tale style. But I think this movie, while maybe not being necessarily like from a modern perspective as progressive as it could have been, I still think is like feels like a much more honest movie that is a lot less concerned with. I get mostly. I guess I'm comparing it to Gone with the Wind, which is not a good comparison to make because that's like the worst possible example.
Yeah, you were saying like mammy characters, and I was like, oh, well, there's definitely some worse examples from right around then.
But I think even like the Elise Guy movie that we watched, I think is like the earliest known movie with an all black cast. That movie was like so much more stereotypical and is like was progressive for the time, but in like such a kind of like incremental way.
And that
Um,
movie was, I mean, that movie was called A Fool and His Money. It was kind of a similar
right?
premise, I
Yeah.
guess, in a way. I guess I should, you mentioned Gone with the Wind, and we have two actors here who are in Gone with
Oh,
the
true. Yeah.
Wind.
Wait,
Uh,
who's, I know Butterfly McQueen. Who's the other one?
I think Rochester was in it too.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I
Um,
did not realize that.
I think it's like a smaller role. Yeah, Butterfly
Okay.
McQueen.
Once Butterfly McQueen shows up, I'm like, oh, she plays like a person in this.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be mean or whatever, but as soon as Butterfly McQueen showed up, I was like, "Oh God, I recognize that voice."
Yeah, it really hurts. It really hurts. I'm sure she was a lovely woman in real life, but I just don't know if I would have been able to have a conversation with her.
I mean, I don't know if I have like big like big thoughts about this movie. There are certain things I feel like I just wrote down that I want to like spotlight.
Yeah.
One is just like the production of this movie. I was really impressed by like the club like getting destroyed at the end is pretty crazy. Like I don't. It's there's all this like pieces of the set that are just falling,
Yeah.
like the roof caving in, and like and even like the design of it once it's been destroyed with like the steps going up to heaven as like I don't know if it was I don't even think it was a matte painting. It was just a painting, like a backdrop. Looks really cool.
Yeah, this kind of striking, jagged staircase. You were mentioning the club getting destroyed too, which featured a tornado, which was more tornado, which was tornado imagery that was shot for fellow MGM movie Wizard of Oz, and so it got to reap that those like incredible special effects rewards from that
Right.
movie. Also, something that shares with Wizard of Oz is that you waking up at the end and it was all a dream.
Yeah, yeah. In general, I don't like as a storytelling device. I think in both this and Wizard of Oz, they kind of get away with it. But it's all a dream. I'm just like, then what did I just watch? Come on. But at least in this, it has a point, and it does kind of play into the like fairy tale-ness of it. I guess we talked about the dance scenes, the like big, the whole kind of like third act in the club. I think is just like really well staged.
Yeah. Yeah, so many cool. I mean, like they kind of take that opportunity to just like have a bunch of great songs, right? Like
Yeah.
the movie does sort
Right.
of like the plot sort of takes a backseat for a while where they're just like everybody's going to sing now and it's all
It
really
does
good.
become like a Duke Ellington concert film for like a good 10 minutes,
Yeah.
which like I'm fine with. Also, there are a couple more lines that really stuck out to me. Was there's a bit where Petunia says, "Sometimes when you fight the devil, you gotta jab him with his own pitchfork," which I like that line. And then at the end, when Ethel shows up at the club where Joe and Georgia Brown are hanging out, Joe is sort of like trying to appeal to her because they're still married at that point,
Hmm.
and he's like, "No, like come on, like this is all frivolous." And she says, "Save that sugar coated talk for your girlfriend." It's like, oh damn, okay. And then there's the
One more thing to mention is that the one of those songs sequences in the club was directed by Busby Berkeley. And I knew that before going into the
mm,
movie, and I was like, "Where is it? Where is it?" And then I see the really dramatic shadows on the wall. I was like, "Found it!"
Yeah.
this movie does have a lot of really good like shadow work. It's like when Lucifer Jr. first shows up, he appears as a shadow on the wall.
Hmm.
I think they kind of there are a couple other times where that is kind of used as like you see a shadow before you see a person,
Yeah.
which I just always like to see.
I like that both of you mentioned The Wizard of Oz because another connection. So it was directed by Vincent Minnelli, and this was actually his like first feature film. Have never really been able to find much on like his process during the film, but I've heard that he was he worked with like a lot of Black organizations to make sure this was like an authentic portrayal. Blah blah blah. But yeah, he obviously ended up with Judy Garland, and they gave us the
Mm-hmm.
wonderful Liza Minnelli. But and he had directed Judy Garland in like musical scenes before, but I think this was his first, full feature. And then I guess actually, yeah, another connection to 1944. He turned around and did Meet Me in St. Louis with um, Judy Garland in 1944, which is another one of my favorite movies. So
Which we'll probably cover on the show. I'm assuming. I think it's a pretty big movie for 44.
yeah, yeah, there's quite a few. I guess like the last little things I want to point out, Eddie Rochester Anderson's performance. I love like just his comedic performance. His comedic abilities are great. There's one part that always makes me laugh out loud. It's where Ethel is like touching his dead kind of body, and then you see little Joe's actual like spirit, but his body, watching all of
Mm-hmm.
this occur. And Petunia like grabs his body's hands, and she says, "Your hands are cold." And he's like, "Of course they is. I'm dead." And I just love that line. Like, it's the way he delivers it is so absolutely perfect. And then the last little thing I want to say about his character is I'm always like super interested in how people view his character, because there's always a lot of talk, at least in like the things I've read, about how in this film, he is almost kind of like a child. Like, his name is Little Joe.
Mhm.
Just physically, he's smaller than Petunia. There's
Hmm.
scenes where, he's in bed and she has to take care of him like he's a child. And he just has this very like goofy, childlike way about him. And it's led to some interesting conversations that I've been a part of on whether or not this was like emasculating to him, or like infantilizing
Mm.
his character. I just think that's always an interesting conversation, especially like when I did this presentation about this film several years ago. There were a lot of like Black people in the audience, and they had thoughts on whether this was, kind of like offensive to Black men. So that was just an interesting conversation that I always like to
Mm.
bring up. I don't, necessarily have anything else to add. But if y'all do, I know Glenn, you said something that you want to follow up with.
I don't know if I necessarily have that much to add to that. I mean, there is this when like initially part of the like the the prayer that Ethel makes that gets uh, forces of the afterlife to kind of make this deal. She starts it by basically praying to God and saying like, I know that Joe is dumb, but like I
Hmm.
love him and he means well. And it's like, but she has to like put a disclaimer on it, like, look, I get it, like Joe, not the brightest bulb, but like, come on, like look at this guy. What's he gonna do?
He's such a little
Um,
cutie.
Yeah,
right, yeah.
it's like he's a little kid.
Which, yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the argument that it is infantilizing towards that character. I mean, even just calling him Little Joe throughout the movie is like, yeah, he's short, but like, I don't know if that's the nicest nickname to give him. I didn't really think that, but yeah, I'm now curious to like read that perspective on it.
I think that like it kind of works in a way because he is it through the movie. It's a lot of him not really being capable of making his own decisions. Like he is
Mm.
being brought back and forth by people who kind of have more power in his life than him, either his wife or the angels and devils on his shoulder. It's like you it puts you in a situation where you can feel worse about the peril of him going to hell, right? It makes him feel more innocent,
Mm,
because like he is not like an unrepentant gambler. He just like can't control himself because he acts like a child. And when
Also, his
he
friends that
like
are gamblers like physically drag him there.
right.
Like he tries to get away and they pull him away. So, yeah.
But like and then like in the movie he is kind of like a vessel for the influence of these, like what you were calling like these sort of parental style figures of the angels and devils. So I don't know, like, yeah, I guess there are ways that like it may be kind of insulting to him, but I also think maybe it kind of makes the movie work a little better because you can kind of get on board with his situation more. You don't have like any kind of like, it doesn't have to grapple with him being a truly bad person because he's innocent enough the whole time because he's a cutie that like he that he never is actually like bad in the movie.
yeah, he's no
Mhm.
Uncle Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Hey, nice way to wrap it up.
I tried. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to mention. I probably do, but I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in this film. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Ambrielle, for joining. She'll be back on to for the send off at the end.